Okay, want to take a look at long jumper, his approach and jump to go over a few things. Um, there's a lot of things here that are very good. Obviously, this is a jumper with some experience. Um, has a lot of good experience in just the event. What we're trying to do is clean up some of the things that could give him that extra little boost. Okay, so you can see him going through his phases, and all in all, everything's good. But we really want to start way at the beginning, because the way you approach the board is going to say a lot about how you take off. I know the quality's not that great, um, but one thing a lot of sprinters and jumpers have to be mindful of is um, the tension and tightness that they create in their prime movers. And typically, where that tightness represents itself is in the hip flexors and the lateral quads. It doesn't seem like a huge deal, but believe it or not, there's something in the body called reciprocal inhibition. So, for example, when one muscle contracts or is tight, the other muscle opposite it has to relax. So, if your quad contracts, your hamstring relaxes. If your biceps contract, your triceps relax. And so, we want to make sure that everything that needs to relax relaxes completely. And if there's tension in the body, that won't be able to happen, so we won't have access to the power in our posterior chain that really helps us explode and jump. Now, it's clear that, balance isn't this athlete's problem, but you can tell that there is some tightness in the quads and hip flexors, and which is why he has to compensate by reaching so much to try to make horizontal displacement happen. So you can see he's reaching forward and he doesn't quite get as on top of it as he wants to. You can see he's really overdoing it with the shoulders just to get over there. But if he was in a more balanced position at takeoff, he'd actually be more on top of it. You see how far behind he is at takeoff? He has to pull his body up and over and almost use energy from his shoulders to get back onto a balanced position. Whereas if he was balanced when he was taking off, if his hips were closer to his foot or not as far behind, in this position he wouldn't be behind in the air. So he'd actually be on top in the air, and that forward momentum would carry him probably another foot at least. So what's the fix? Okay, anybody can point out the problem, but we need to point out a solution. One of the things I would recommend is, number one, get a foam roller, foam roll the lateral quads and the hip flexors. Just try to get them as loose as humanly possible, because you can tell he does a lot of high knee work, so those hip flexors get very tight. Okay, so what we want to do is put him in positions like a half kneeling stretch, and by stretch I don't mean try to go nuts with it, but a pigeon stretch, or using the foam roller to work on some of the denser tissues of the lateral quad and hip flexors, TFL area. And then what that should do is allow the high knee action to be a lot more natural and fluid, which means he won't have to reach to get to the board as much. He can pretty much just drive his foot straight down and his body won't be behind. It'll actually be on top of it. And then you see there won't be this kind of scissor looking pose. It'll be more of a up and down high knees, so his cycle will be a lot faster, and he'll probably get 2 or 3 cycles, at least an additional one, before he has to go into his landing. That would be my recommendation, and if you have any questions, hit me up.